Hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode 7 of the Improving Always podcast. And we're going to be talking about what I think is one of the most underrated skills to have as a professional athlete, and obviously a professional football or soccer player specifically, and that is decision making. So I will kick us off by saying that one thing that I've noticed is that as you play at higher and higher levels, obviously players get technically better. They get more fit. There's a lot of things that change, a lot of things that improve. But the biggest change for me is that athletes make better decisions on and off the ball. That's what truly separates good players from great players is their decision making, at least in my opinion. And obviously, we might have all have a little bit of a different opinion on this, but we're going to talk about how important decision making is, what good decision making looks like, and then also how to improve your decision making. So we'll go into all of that starting right now. So anyone want to kick us off with, stories or just thoughts on how important making good decisions is on the pitch?
I just want to second the point that you made, Christo, about the biggest difference between the higher levels and lower levels being things such as decision making, playing intelligent. That was my experience, especially when I went into a pro indoor team, is that the players seemed to understand what they were doing. Their movements had purposes, their passes had purposes, and they worked as a team and as a unit opposed to as individuals that happened to be on the same team, which my experience playing lower level soccer, a lot of times it was individuals happened to be playing on the same team, not a cohesive unit. And once you get to the higher levels, you find players that are capable of playing as one team. And other than technical abilities, it really is the decision-making and soccer IQ that is the big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I also there's this big misconception whenever I bring up, decision-making, it's like, oh, you need to pass more. You need to do this. No, it's not about that. Obviously, at the end of most plays that you do, whether you're dribbling or just, taking your first touch and then you do something, like most of the time you're passing at the end of that play, but that does not mean that all I'm saying is pass the ball. Because one thing I hate more than anything else is when players pass the ball and that pass accomplishes nothing. If you have space in front of you, most of the time, making a sideways pass is the wrong decision. Making a pass to put a teammate in the same situation you are or a worse situation is not a good decision. If you have space, you need to drive into that space. If you're in a 1v1 and if you win that 1v1, you're through on goal, unless you have a teammate in a better position, you need to take that 1v1. So it's not all about passing. It's just about making good decisions in whatever the given situation is.
Yeah, I remember my coach 2 years ago was telling we always had team talks before practice, and this one might have been before a game actually. And he said the difference between players in the 3rd and 4th division of Spain and players in the 1st and 2nd division is decision making and concentration. In the 1st and 2nd division, they're concentrated and they're making the right decisions 99% of the time, 100% of the time. And in the lower divisions, it's 80, 75% of the time. So that's really just the main difference between everyone.
Yeah. And I see a lot of videos where it's the biggest change from, low level to high level is speed of play. And I agree with that mostly. I remember when I was playing for IL, the academy, we had a game against some of the substitutes for the first team. And it was one of the craziest experiences because obviously they were so much better than us. And I think, we played 30 minutes or something. We didn't play a full game or anything. But it was just happened. They were training on this field. We were training on the other field. They had played a game before. So it was just the substitutes. So they had about 15 guys or something. And so we decided, we just play the last 30 minutes instead of scrimmaging, by ourselves. We just combine and play. And in those 30 minutes, I think we lost like 3-0 or something. And our coach talked to us afterwards. And he was like, we lost. Okay. Most of you are like 16, 17. Some of the players were like 19 or 20. The players you're playing against, they are bigger than you. They are faster than you. They're stronger than you. They're more technical than you. It's okay. You will get there. You have years to improve on that stuff. But what I was really pleased with is that your decision-making was good. Your speed of play was good. We were trying to do the right things. It's just that in a 1v1 situation, one of our players would try to take the 1v1. They'd usually lose it. And on the opposite side, when their players were taking the 1v1s, they were better players. So they'd win the 1v1s and they'd create opportunities through that, right? Like the passes were a little bit better, a little bit crisper. The first touch was a little bit better, but we were playing like to their level in certain ways. It just wasn't, as kind of clean, technically, as fast, all of that. So yeah, speed of play, you can say speed of play is good, but like speed of play doesn't matter if you're making the wrong decisions. It's about playing quickly, but also making those good decisions and making those good decisions quickly. Because anyone can make good decisions if you had a pause button to stop in the middle of a game, look around. Okay. All right. Now maybe I know what to do. Press play. Press play. Well, you would hope, right? That most players would be able to do that with time. The real trick is being able to do it in the moment. So it's just such an important skill. And that's what, I feel will really take, can take a good player and allow them to play at a higher level.
Going back to what you said about speed of play, I think it's kind of a little similar, right? Because speed of play is basically how fast you make those decisions, which is going back to decision making, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to bring that up. Like they go into one another.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the point Christo's making is there are certain players that just kind of run around like a chicken with their head cut off. And yeah, their speed of play is really, really fast. It's just they're not making any decisions whatsoever. And what Christo wants to see is you making good decisions on a regular basis quickly, not just, I get the ball, I run real fast. And that goes to a point that I sometimes make with youth players when they hear the term speed of play, they hear speed and their brain turns off and they think that means run fast. And there are plenty of examples of players who were not actually physically very fast, even at the highest levels, who had brilliant speed of play. For example, Zinedine Zidane is probably
Xavi, Busquets.
And but their speed of play is elite of the elite, even at the top level. And it's because their brain is going 100 miles per hour, even if their feet can barely run 15.
Yeah, 100%. Like when I, started playing with like way older players at 16 and I was playing on a men's team with players who were like 35. I remember this one guy who was like, pretty out of shape. But he looked very out of shape. And he was actually more in shape than you would imagine, but he just made good decisions. He played center back and he was never going to ground. He was never, going in for crazy challenges or anything. He was just always in the right place to pick up the loose balls, always in the right place to cover for teammates. He was all on the ball. He was always, being intelligent with where he was going to pass, if he was going to drive forward, intelligently dropping off to create a backwards passing option. We can get into a little bit of what is good decision making. For me, one of the biggest mistakes that I see players make is what I said before, making passes that accomplish nothing. If you have space in front of you, and this is something the most common thing you will hear me say if you see me coaching a game or a training session is hello. What is it? Can anyone guess?
Hello.
One word. No,
Take
it's
your
definitely
space.
not.
Why?
Be quiet. I hate you all.
I mean, basically a synonym of what Noblet said, but drive. I want players to drive into space. When it's there, you need to attack the space. I see like so many center backs get the ball and they pass sideways to the other center back when there's space in front of them. Now, I'm not saying that you need to drive forward and take on 50 defenders as a center back, but like, you know, if you have space and you don't take it, it's going to be very difficult for your team to create anything. If you, as a center back, drive forward a little bit, pull the forward to you, play around them, you've just opened up so much space for your team. Obviously, even more so in more advanced positions. You know, if you were a center mid who only makes sideways and backwards passes, the most annoying player I've ever played with in my life. But Dimitri, don't say his name. You're not doing much. You might be able to retain possession for your team, but you know, obviously there's other examples like passing to teammates when they're in better positions than you rather than in shooting and stuff. But the most common example I see is players making nothing passes, which is kind of funny because most people think when I say make good decisions, it means pass the ball. It doesn't mean pass the ball. You know, and another big one I see is players not taking 1v1s when taking that 1v1 would open up a lot of space. You know, like you'll lose some 1v1s. That's fine. But the reason you're taking a 1v1 usually is because if you win that 1v1, you're through on goal. You're free to put in a dangerous cross, put in a dangerous shot, a dangerous through ball, something like that. Like if you take 1v1s at the right time, you know, winning them 50% of the time, maybe even winning them 30 or 40% of the time is still huge. It can still be huge for your team. So what are other mistakes you guys see players make that, you know, make you rip out your hair?
I want to just add on something about that because it's something I really like is you don't put people into a box of what is a good decision, what is a bad decision. I see so many people saying that if you're in the defensive third, pass. You have no other option. You have to pass. And I think this is just very closed-minded and is not really true to the fluid nature of the sport. Soccer is too fluid to have any one thing in your mind at any one time. There are times in the game where you're in your defensive third where the best option literally is to turn your man with them on your back. Now, that's probably rare, but I've been in options like that where like I had nothing else. I could kick the ball out for a corner kick or turn my man, and I preferred to turn my man. But you have to be able to make decisions on the fly and don't put yourself into boxes. And this is the one area where I say you do have to make sure that you have a high technical level and improve all your technical level, because I kind of see technical skills and to some degree athletic ability as well as like little keys that open up new moves that you can do. And that allows you more options and more ability to make those decisions. And that might be why some of these slower players like Zidane, Busquets, Xavi, and Iniesta can do more, is because they're technically so efficient. They could do what they wanted. So it didn't have any closed doors in their brain for decision making.
If I can add on to what Christo said and what Noblet said about like playing with like a closed box or like making useless passes in the defensive third or whatever, I think that can be a direct correlation to playing scared, right? Without confidence. So you don't want to take those 1v1s. You don't want to take those risks, which also I want to bring up that in that way, training your confidence, whichever way that is for you, can actually improve your speed of play / your decision making, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
But also maybe they're the players who are too confident, you know? There's one player who he'd get the ball in the midfield and then he'd dribble and he'd do like 12 step overs and then he'd like look around and then you'd see no pass and just turn around and pass it back. And I was like, excuse me? And he was a really good player, but he'd do that like 5 times a game. And I was like, whoa, just calm down.
I had a player who I played with at Ambeloniakos. And in training sessions, when we were scrimmaging, he used to get the ball as a center mid and he would dribble backwards and he would dribble to right in front of his goal And then he would like challenge people to like come win the ball from him. And he never lost the ball. He was an absolute monster. This guy, he went on to play for some even higher level teams, but he was an absolute monster. And we would have like 2 or 3 people, all trying to win the ball from him at once, and he'd be dribbling like a foot away from the goal line. Before he, and it'd be like 3 people would get on him before he would pass the ball away. Obviously not a good decision. And he didn't do that in games, but it was pretty hilarious to watch. I remember I made a TikTok a while ago about like someone said like how to build your confidence. Make a couple simple passes at the beginning of the game, play simply for the first 10 minutes. Absolutely not. I think like if you need to make simple passes to build up your confidence, you have no confidence. Like, I really think like, say you get the ball at the beginning of a game and you're in a great position to shoot. Like, you're going to shoot. You need to, like, you should shoot, right? Like, what are you going to do? Like, turn around and pass the ball because that's simpler. Like,
you get played through the goal and you turn backwards because you're too scared to take it on.
Yeah. And if you miss, you miss. Like, if you take a 1v1 early on in a game and you lose that 1v1, what? You're never going to win another 1v1. That doesn't mean anything, right? Like, it's not against Dimitri if he's playing fullback, right?
That's true. You won't win one regardless of if you win.
It's the match analysis that I did for you. That's actually, it was such a good match analysis. I had a couple of fullbacks who I talked to the other day on Discord, and I was like telling them to go watch it. But it's so good because you don't get beat in a 1v1 a single time. Is actually like
just
and you play
delay.
like you play those 1v1s like so well. Like, obviously there's like other stuff that I talk about, but like the 1v1s, it's so perfect because you like I don't know, it's just, I just thought it was funny. And that's like something that a lot of defenders struggle with a lot. But like, you're not building your confidence when you're on the pitch. You're building it when you're off the pitch, and when you get on the field, you play with confidence, at least in my opinion. Some people might disagree with me. That's life. But it's if you're on the field and you're trying to build your confidence, it's too late.
Something Dimitri said there with the delay. And this is probably one of the things that I see with defenders, which is bad decision-making. And we have to talk about defensive decision-making too.
100%.
Because sometimes that actually matters even more than the offensive decision making. But he said delay. And what does delay mean? It means I'm not going to rush in and just try to win the ball immediately. I'm going to be patient, stay in a good defensive position, and I'm going to wait for the attacker to either retreat or make a mistake myself or make a mistake themselves before I try to take the ball. And as a more attacking minded player myself, what I really love are defenders that are not patient and want to try to win the ball, because I normally force them into the mistake and I can take advantage of it. And when you're patient as a defender, maybe one of the best in the world at this right now, I'd say, is Virgil van Dijk. I rarely see him just go into very, very rash challenges just for the sake of going into challenges. Like, you did a video analysis of him in a 2v1 once, and some people like got onto him, and what he did was he basically took a in-between position of cutting off the pass and not giving the attacker the easiest shooting option. And that was by far the best position, and it was not the position most defenders would have done. Most defenders would have came in and they would have tried to win the ball immediately because they're in a 2v1 and they think the only way I can stop this is if I get in and get a tackle in. And that would have been the way that I think it was Newcastle would have got an easy tap in.
Was it Tottenham maybe?
I think it was Tottenham.
Yeah, it was probably Tottenham.
Yeah, I've seen that clip a lot where they, the 2v1 defending is just like so good. And yeah, that's like exactly what I say. Like, if you're a fullback, go watch that full match analysis I did of Dimitri. It is, like, if you're a fullback specifically, might be the best piece of content that I've ever put out that you could
Dimitri's
watch.
ego is just getting stroked.
But
what a fantastic
he makes plenty of mistakes. But like every player does. But in the 1v1s, it was really, really good. And like, something that I say all the time when I'm, coaching defenders or like coaching people how to defend is like, when you're not in possession, for the first 5 seconds you're out of possession, your goal is to win the ball back. After that, your primary goal is not to win the ball back. It's to keep them from scoring. And then your secondary goal will be to win the ball back. So yeah, obviously you want to have the ball. Okay. But if they have the ball and they're not creating anything, that's okay. And the chance will come to win the ball back. But first of all, you need to stop them from creating anything. If you're in a 1v1 defensively, the best thing you can do isn't win that 1v1. It's not let that attacker even take the 1v1. So you're backing off slowly, you're containing them. All right. And you force them to just turn around and play back, because you're not going to give them the chance to take you on. When the ball is going to the winger, you get tight on them. You close them down as a fullback so that they either have to turn you with their first touch, or they just have to play the ball back or play the ball inside or something. Rather than giving them space, they turn, they drive at you, because that's what, hopefully if you're playing on the wing, that's what you love to do, is get the ball, have space, and run at a defender. That's when you're dangerous. Not if the defender is already on top of you and not letting you turn and not letting you drive forward. Obviously good players can figure out ways around this, play inside and make your little run and stuff. But like, if you can stop a winger from taking those 1v1s, you've done your job. Like, you've done really, really well. If you're forcing them to pass the ball around you instead, that's a good thing. Delay, I said delay, contain, and stay with, and also like when you get beat, doesn't matter, but you still try to get back and put some pressure on, sometime attackers are going to have chances in every game to score goals. But if you're an attacking player, that if you have a chance and there's no pressure on you, that like no defenders anywhere, it can be a lot easier, unless you get inside your head, of course. But like, that's objectively it's easier. Whereas like if a defender is trying to get there and close you down, is trying to get a foot in to block your shot, even if they don't actually do it, that little bit of pressure can make you rush the shot, can make you miss. Good decision making comes in all different forms: in possession, out of possession. It's just so much that goes into it. Not to overwhelm anybody, but there's tons of different ways you can make good decisions.
And on that, tons of different ways to make good decisions, I would say this is one of the other aspects that really separates high-level soccer from lower-level soccer is decision-making offensively when you're off the ball, not just when you're on it. Because when you look at really, really low-level soccer, most players stand when they're off the ball, and they wait for their turn to get it. Where you watch the highest levels of soccer, the most active players are oftentimes the people off the ball. For one, you can run faster when you're off the ball than when you're on it. And two, the defense is normally a little bit more aware of the guy who's on the ball, so they're not just going to let him dribble through. I mean, I might do that anyway, but so you really need to understand how to make runs, how to be deceptive, how to create space for your teammates, not necessarily even for yourself. And this is probably one of the more difficult things for players to pick up. It's one of the things I've at least found harder to coach to players in the past. I don't know if Christo, Dimitri, or SK have similar experiences of that.
So for like off the ball movement.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, and
That's
like I'll second that. I'll tell you how I make it fun for players. But I'll second that with like players standing still, but also like when they do move, they move in straight lines. They run just straight forward or straight this way or whatever. You need to add, creativity and unpredictability to your movement off the ball. You have to come close, go far, go close, go this way. Yeah, exactly. These are the runs that great players are making. They're not just running in a straight line. As in terms of like coaching off the ball movement, when I do sessions focused on off the ball movement, I often, start with something like handball, or, I do like 2v2s with a ball in the air, which a lot of players enjoy. And also it lets people focus, especially with lower level teams. If you have an advanced team, maybe you don't have to do it. I do sometimes just because it's fun. But especially with teams that are a little bit lower level, it's easier to catch a ball than it is to take a great first touch, right?
Walking soccer too.
Oh,
where you're only allowed to walk. And what walking soccer, actually, the beauty of walking soccer is it takes away one, athletic advantages people have, and two, it slows the game down in a way that allows you to be able to pick your head up and make those decisions. So it's basically kind of like having training wheels. You put on your training wheels, learn how to ride, then you take the training wheels off eventually, and that's returned to the real game. And I think that's really helpful. Oh, I just kind of wanted to bring this up because I was nerding out last night on Johan Cruyff's Instagram and all the little quotes. Some of them I love, some of them I are okay on, some of them I hate. But one of the ones I love is you're only on the ball about 3 minutes per game. And what matters is the 87 minutes off the ball. And that really, in my opinion, is one of the things that separates a very high soccer IQ from a lower soccer IQ. Is most people think the only thing that matters is when the ball's at their feet. And no, I mean, what matters is how are you helping your team, even if you're not touching the ball, even if you're not involved, even with most plays, maybe you're a very skillful attacking player, but the other team knows that. So they're going double hard to mark you, but you have upped your ability to move off the ball to where you're creating space for your teammates that you maybe wouldn't if they weren't doubling down trying to cut you out of the game. I mean, so everything has an impact on the game as long as you stay engaged and stay trying to be creative, even if you're not the one on the ball yourself.
Yeah, and like the goal. Go ahead, D.
No, I was just gonna say those are the most important movements that you make all game. The ones that you don't get the ball probably. So influential in the whole game. And that also reminds me of my favorite Johan Cruyff quote when he was asked if he allowed his players to smoke when he was coaching Barca, and he was like, if they were as good as me, I'd let them, but
that's great.
That brings up a point. In one of my last pro indoor games, I didn't score or get an assist, but I made a run that opened up the pass to my teammate who did score.
Timo Werner.
Yeah, so it was, I mean, it's something that, like, unless you get into extremely in-depth data analysis, most people it will go completely unnoticed. And even some coaches, it would go unnoticed. But I noticed it and my teammate noticed it because he saw me leave that space and he immediately entered that space because I took a defender with me and he had an open shot on goal because of it.
Yeah. And like the goal of off the ball movement, a lot of players like think about it the wrong way. It's not to get the ball. It's to open up space. And then if you get the ball, great. But like, it's to pull defenders out of position. It's not to necessarily get the ball. You need to make those runs, even if you're 100% sure that you're not going to get the ball, the defenders aren't. So you need to make those runs. I don't care if you know that your teammate has never passed, salt at the dinner table, let alone the soccer ball in a game. Like, it's you still need to make that run. And one other thing I'll say is this is going way back, but we were talking about Virgil van Dijk's challenge in the 2v1 that he defended successfully as the one defender. Like talking about decision making again, like the one thing that I hear coaches say all the time is like you need to make conservative decisions, not take any risk in your defensive third, and you need to take risks in the opposition third. But I don't think that's true. You need to take risks when you need to take risk, right? Like in a 2v1 as the defender, who's taking the risk? The defender has to. You need to try to make that situation a 1v1 instead, maybe by like blocking the pass and letting the opponent have a little bit of space and then putting in your challenge rather than, as an attacker in a 2v1, you're not going to take risk. You're going to drive at the defender, pull them to you, and then make the pass. Or if they block the pass, you're going to go yourself, right? Like that's not risk. What you're not going to do is like drive at the defender, your teammate's wide open right there, and take the 1v1 instead. Probably. It's not about, there's not like a good decision to make in this situation and not in this situation. Like it's all fluid, and, defenders take risk all the time, and attackers sometimes don't have to play with risk to score goals. It's all about the situation you're in.
That reminds me of your least favorite Johan Cruyff quote. Do you remember it? Because I remember you made a story post on Instagram about it.
Oh, no. What was it?
It was, football is a game of mistakes. The team that makes the least mistakes wins.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can probably, like, if I could talk to Johan Cruyff, we could probably come to an understanding. But, yeah.
Well, what I noticed, I mean, I love Johan Cruyff. I mean, he's a legend of the game. But what I noticed with the quotes, especially out of context quotes, is one, a lot of them are brilliant. Some of them are like really obvious, and some of them just don't make any sense whatsoever. They're contradictory to his other quotes, and even contradictory just to the way he played himself. Because I mean, one of the things that he helped revolutionize the game with was what was known as total football. And he has another quote, which I really love, is I like to turn things on its head. I like to tell my goalkeeper he's the first attacker, and I like to tell my striker he's the first defender. And he really revolutionized the idea of players playing as soccer players, not as I am a striker, I am a defender, I am a midfielder, I am a goalkeeper, in the very robotic fashion that maybe some other countries played at that time. But then you randomly find the one who's like, game is about mistakes, and it's like, Johan Cruyff wasn't setting up Ajax or Barcelona to defend and not make mistakes. He wanted them to outplay the other team.
Those were the quotes when his nicotine levels were just like way over what they should have been, and he doesn't even remember saying them.
Like maybe like defensive mistakes, maybe, but like on the ball, the thing, like I often see like teams that win probably misplace more passes, teams that win probably miss more chances. Like, obviously it depends on the game, but like when I'm watching, at least like I do this better for like individual players, because I do some like player evaluations and stuff. Like for individual players, I rarely like penalize players for making mistakes on the ball. Often the players I rate the highest are players who make a lot of mistakes because they are, on the ball a lot. So like percentage wise, they might not be making like a mistake like half the time, but like if you get the ball 3 times and you mess up once, like, that's not great. But like if you get the ball like, 50 times in a game, and you make a couple mistakes, you probably make 10 mistakes. Like you probably make more than that, honestly. Like, especially if you're a very attacking player, right? Like, especially if you're a winger, if you're taking 1v1s, you might lose half of those. I'm not going to penalize you for that. Unless the defender, like, I don't know, has no legs or something. I don't know.
Going back to what Cruyff said, like the quote about soccer is a game of mistakes, I think the main thing he meant by it is the team that makes the less mistakes while still implementing the risks and the decision making that you need to, right? While people, when they see that quote, they instantly go to playing simple and always playing the safe way instead of actually taking risks, because that does reduce the mistakes, but it just brings your team down overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's where the context of Cruyff's overall career comes into play. But the problem with just out of context quotes is people will post the quote and be like, see, Cruyff said so. You should play defensive and never go forward, never take a risk, and then you'll win the game. And it's like, are most goals caused at least by a partial mistake somewhere on the field? Probably.
Yeah.
But some goals are also a piece of brilliance by a brilliant player. I mean, if Messi dices 2 defenders just because he's Messi, are we going to say that's a mistake by the other team? I probably not. I'm probably going to point out that Messi's really
Really good.
He's really hard to stop.
Yeah, like I say that when teams can see, or like when my teams can see goals like from like incredible long shots, and it's just like, throw your hands up. What are you gonna do? Like he hit top bins from 30 yards. Like I don't know. Like if it's that good a shot, like what should someone have closed him down a bit quicker? Maybe, but most goals are scored because of mistakes. But there are goals where it's like, we defended well, but not well enough to prevent that.
Look at my repertoire of goals, just all.
Yeah.
No one can stop them if they tried.
And something I think a lot of people underestimate is how much chance is involved, especially in the penalty area where things can go crazy and be just very, very chaotic. And you could be defending very, very well on a cross or play in the penalty area. And it just takes an odd deflection. Is that a mistake? You could argue it's a mistake that your attempt to block the shot didn't send it out for a corner kick, but it actually put it into the top corner. But I think that's kind of a harsh thing to say, is that that's a mistake and not partially just chance as well. And unfortunately, chance does play a role in this sport. Like the best teams, of course, create their own luck, but luck still is part of the game. Because if it wasn't, we would never see any upsets ever. Only the best teams would win every single game. You would never have an upset.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's something I say all the time. Like results-based analysis is like the most toxic thing in the world. Like, you cannot say I made a good decision because I scored. That's not how it works. You can shoot when the right decision was to pass and you score. That doesn't make it a good decision. And you should still recognize that the decision wasn't a good decision and you should pass next time. In the long run, you make good decisions, you'll be more successful. Everyone gets lucky at times. Everyone makes bad decisions and things work out. But like if your team wins a game, that can hide a lot of mistakes that you made. And maybe the coach is just like, we won. That's all that matters. Absolutely not. If you lose a game, that might expose a lot of the mistakes you made. Does it necessarily mean you played horribly? Absolutely not. You don't base your analysis of a situation based on if things worked out or if they didn't. You have to actually analyze those situations. And I think go ahead.
But you can finish if you want. I don't mind.
No, go ahead.
All right. That's kind of what's been happening at United, right, in the Champions League, where they make a lot of mistakes during the game, and then like last second, Maguire scores a header, like Ronaldo basically pulls them out and wins the game for them.
I thought you were going to say Maguire pulls off a wonder goal or something. I was going to be like, wait a minute.
Is the mistake not sacking their coach?
This actually brings up an interesting point, though, because you're talking about results-based analysis. And while I don't think results-based analysis is completely useless, I just think it's useless in the way 99% of people use it, which is maybe your past 10 games. If in your past 10 games, you lose 5, draw 3, and you only won 2, everyone's going to be pointing the finger that you're doing terribly. To where a better results-based analysis would be a full season at least. And what I would say is most teams are very quick to fire managers on one bad streak of form. And they think that this is going to solve their problems. And usually it doesn't. And what they actually see typically happen is whoever the new manager is has a good streak of form immediately, because typically teams kind of peak and valley with their form anyways. And so they valleyed when the manager got fired. Then they'll start peaking with the new manager, and then it'll go right back to that valley. And they haven't even assessed the actual problems with the team because they just changed the guy who they put the blame on. And maybe this is boardroom decision-making that's wrong and not on the field, which is probably what matters more for our players. But it is something to look at when you're looking at any type of data analysis on results or anything like this. Don't look at one or two pieces of evidence. You need to have a larger sample size of evidence to actually come up with a good decision and come to good conclusions.
Yeah, looking at like things like expected goals rather than like actual goals, that actually can be like super helpful to like realize like how a team is and like expected goals conceded, obviously, to see like how a team is playing in general. And teams that have really high expected goals, but they don't actually score those goals. I do believe like the goals will come, and maybe, in some situations you need a different coach to get that. Sometimes maybe in a certain situation you need the players to do something differently. But if the team is playing well, that's, long term, that'll be more important than winning a couple games in the short term. And it's important to not let your decision making get clouded by, a couple bad results or a couple good results, right?
Yeah, someone scores a wonder goal in an important game, and you forget that they're actually a defensive midfielder that only passes sideways, and that was the first shot they've taken in an entire year.
Yeah. So I think that's a good transition into like kind of what you can do to train decision making. I get asked this question a ton because I talk about decision making a ton, and obviously the most important thing is experience. Playing with and playing especially with good players who are better than you is the best thing that you can do. And especially like I think players, playing like small-sided games, like with really high-level players, even like 2v2, 3v3, 5v5, whatever it is, that stuff trains decision making, because you're always on the ball. You always have to make decisions. You have to make them quickly because space is small. If I had to pick like one thing to improve your decision making, it would be playing small-sided games with good players.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Decision making is where it's very limited on the ways that you can improve it. Like for everything else, you can kind of improve it on your own by individual training or whatever. But decision making is something like that. You can't really train it on your own. You have to find a group of people or just players to play with, which is why like team training is so important, right? You could maybe make an argument that individual training increases your technical ability, and then with that technical ability, you can make a better choice, or even game analysis maybe. But yeah, for me, I have the same answer as Christo, which is like just play with better players, even to get that experience and make better decisions.
Yeah, I think you can. You can also talk to your coach, see what he thinks you should do in certain situations that you're unsure of if you're making the right decision. Talk to other players who play in your position who are better than you. See what they say about it.
Or even if they don't play in your position, right? Like like a goalkeeper will help a lot with defensive position as well.
Yeah. And besides that, just keep training as much as you can with other people.
Yeah. And I just want to second the point about small-sided games and futsal even. Guys, please play futsal if you have the opportunity to. Futsal is, if you want to be Ronaldinho, Neymar, Messi, any of these guys played futsal as kids. And it's very common among South American players, and probably fairly common among Spanish players as well. But in small-sided games, there is no hiding. You have to play and you have to be involved. You cannot hide off into the corner and just not play a part in the game so no one sees you make mistakes. You have to be involved. You're always going to be on the ball at one point at a time. You're always going to be defending at one point at a time. So it forces you to actually be able to try to play, and you have to be able to make decisions on the fly, and it will improve your technical skills vastly. And to the point SK was making, yes, unfortunately, this is probably the aspect that is the hardest to train individually. However, there are certain things you can do, and the biggest one is the point you made, improving your technical abilities. Like I said, it's like getting a new key that opens a new door into your decision making. But other things you can do is be creative, recreate types of opportunities that you might see in a game. So, for example, one of the favorite things I like to do when I train is I like to play the ball to the air, bring it down, and try to cut and turn at an angle that would be realistic as a striker cutting to turn to try to shoot. I do things like that all the time. If you have a wall to play on, practice playing the ball into the wall, checking your shoulder and turning. There are certain things you do. It's not exactly game-like, but unless you're in a game, nothing is 100% game-like. It's always a simulation of a game.
Yeah, definitely. The two things I would say for individual training, are obviously, do the team sessions if you can, but you can train decision making in a way in individual sessions. I don't like exactly what Noblet said. I don't like, training passing, training shooting, training dribbling. You need to add these things together to make it game realistic, right? Like there's a time and a place to train just one specific thing, but I think like the majority of your training should be adding different things together. So dribbling into shooting, or first touch into dribbling into shooting, first touch into passing, whatever it is. And you have to push the intensity, right? If you just go through the motions, that's not going to help that much, because in a game, you need to be doing things quickly. If you train yourself to do things like very, very slowly in all of your training, it's not going to translate to games. You need to push the intensity, which is hard when it's just you sometimes, but it definitely is possible. And then anything else on individual training?
This is also when you should be Go ahead.
All right, I'll go. Oh. Sorry about that. Just one thing I mentioned earlier, also confidence. Like I said, if you're not as confident, you probably won't be making the best decisions. You just be making the safest decisions for yourself. That's it.
Yeah, 100%.
And the point I was going to be is this is your time to be creative. If you see a trick that you saw a professional player, or even a street soccer player, anything do, and you say, hey, I want to try this, I want to do this. These individual sessions are the perfect scenario to try these tricks. And it reminds me of a point. I think you or I made a video, something's like somebody commented, don't try a rainbow in a game. It won't work. It's like, hell yes, I'm going to try a rainbow in a game. I've done it in a game and I've been successful with it in a game. And I wouldn't have been successful if I wasn't practicing it on my own. And these are, a point that you've made, Christo, many times is like the only thing that really takes to beat a defender is change of pace and change direction. But these creative little moves can create that change of pace and change of direction in ways that can deceive defenders and surprise people in ways that maybe a simple inside of the foot cut won't do. And the only time you're going to be able to really practice these as hard as you can are going to be your individual sessions. And if you want to be there are professional players that play very simple and they are there because mostly they just do the simple things really, really well. But normally those aren't the best of the best players. They're not your Messis. They're not your Neymars. They're not your Cristiano Ronaldos. These guys have a little something special. And you don't get that little something special unless you train these special abilities. And they do that. And you see that in their performances in the game.
Yeah. Like the more times you've made a pass, if you made a pass like hundreds of times in a week, like when the game comes, you can be confident. You know you can do it. If you've taken 1,000 first touches that week, you know you can do it when the game comes. And if you haven't, then you're not going to be as confident, and it's probably not going to work out as well. Other things for like technical training, moving a little bit away from individual sessions, is like I've done a lot of experimenting with like how to do small-sided games. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of futsal. Played a lot of futsal myself. Coached a decent amount of futsal, and I love futsal. But I always play small-sided games every single session I do. Or probably 95+% of the training sessions I do. And I see a lot of people like, it's the same small-sided game every time. I love putting athletes in different putting players in different kinds of situations in small-sided games. So I experimented a lot with, playing diagonally instead of playing, with the goals in corners rather than just on the sides of the field in the middle. Done a lot of, playing to gates instead of playing to goals. So, kind of mimicking like playing in the middle of the field and creating space and then driving into the gate, driving through the gate. And that's like, we're into the next passage of play. My favorite small-sided game right now, obviously, I'm not saying like it's the best one that you should only play, but is to play diagonally. And what I do is I make it kind of like Murderball, where the ball never goes out. So I put players around the outsides of the field. If the ball goes out, you toss the ball on. Usually what I do is I have 3 teams and I put one team on the outside. So one on each side of the field. If it's like a 4v4, if it's a 5v5, then we have an extra. They can collect balls, and they each have a ball in their hands. If the ball goes out on their sides, they put a ball in play, go get the one that went out. And if a goal is scored, I have everything changes. So the team that got scored on goes on the outside. The team that was on the outside goes and defends the goal that wasn't scored on. The team that scored gets the ball out of the net, turns around, and now attacks the opposite way. Just because I think keeping the ball in play all the time, adding in changes every goal that's scored, a new team is playing, and we're playing in a different direction. I think that stuff, it's not to train their technical ability better, but it's to make them make quicker decisions, make them get used to things constantly changing. I love training decision making, and small-sided games make you make a lot of decisions. And I just want to even make them make even more and even more decisions, because, that's, something that I think is very important for players.
That's funny because here in Spain, it's like all small-sided. And there are so many different variations, but we always, with every team, we'd always hate if it wasn't just regular 3v3, 4v4, 5v5. And if there were random rules, everyone would just be so annoyed the whole time.
My players loved it. I don't know. I should come run a session in Spain.
But something to that point about how Spanish, it's always small-sided. This is a big difference between the current American mindset for soccer and a lot of the countries that are ahead of us right now. Is a lot of Americans think if we're not playing 11v11, we're not playing the real game. And that's just not really true. And I think it's an area where a lot of Americans are missing out on it. It's if you play small-sided, you're going to get it better. That, and when you play small-sided, it is actually the real game. The real game could be broken down into a bunch of 3v3, 4v4 situations. It's not like the real game is complete. It's not like the real game is chess and small-sided is checkers. They're much more closely related. And I think this is something that coaches need to do more often, is when they scrimmage, even if you have 2 games of 4v4 going on at the same time or something like that, instead of having one larger side game, sometimes that's even better. Now, there is one rule restriction, and this is probably the most common rule restriction that I've experienced as a player and seen coaches do.
One touch, two touch.
I was going to get to that. I'm not going to say there's not a time and a place for it, but I absolutely despise it because unlike every other restriction, it's just closing off a door, because now I'm not allowed to dribble when I have space. And you know what? Defenders recognize that. I've never played a 2-touch game where a defender gets on me because they think I can dribble. They always stand off you and give you that space because they're making a good decision themselves, because you only have 2 touches. You're not going to dribble. And I think a lot of coaches really just kind of dogmatically stick to 2 touches is better. That makes you play faster. It's it doesn't make me play faster when I have space in front of me and I can't run. It makes me play slower because now I have to stop and pick a pass. And it's probably going to be a negative or simple pass because it's harder to do that when I can't dribble and create space.
Yeah, I Go ahead, D.
I was just gonna say it's funny because here when I was playing with Naval Carnero and we got promoted that season from the 4th to the 3rd division, the only time we ever played 11v11s was Thursdays at the end of a session, and it would be 6-minute halves, and we just played 2 halves, and that's the only time we ever trained 11v11s.
Yeah,
I
think
we all hated it.
Training 11v11 is, you get the ball less. Like, why? Like, better to play even like 7v7 or 8v8 on like half field, like something like that, and just do like 2 games at once, right? Or have the other, the other players play like a small sided game on their own. Usually, that's what I'd do. It's funny about the touch rule because I rarely tell players to take less touches. Usually, I do it individually. So I will tell an individual player, you only have 2 touches or whatever it is. And then also I do 5 touch more often than I do 1 or 2 touch, because I want players taking more touches, because that's the decision they're making badly, is they're not taking enough touches usually, rather than taking too few. I've actually done that more often than I told a player, you need to take 2 touches. Although I do occasionally, if a player is never passing the ball, I say, 2 touch, 3 touch, whatever it is.
Yeah, I've seen players that panic every time they get the ball, and their coaches still put them in games and say, you have to use 2 or less touches. And it's like, well, they panic every time they get the ball. So they're already giving it away in 2 or less touches. It's just their pass is always to almost no one. So you're actually just feeding into the problem instead of making them better. It's that type of player. I'd almost say you have to dribble 5 touches. Now, I normally don't tell players they have to dribble 5 touches or something like that. But I think what a lot of people forget with this is, when you look at the highest levels, it is usually 2 to 3 touches maximum. But that's not because they wouldn't take more touches if they could. It's because normally at that level, the defenses are sophisticated enough and they need to play so quickly that the best option usually is passing within 2 to 3 touches. But like I said, you're not going to have Lionel Messi if Lionel Messi can't dribble, because that's probably the thing he's absolutely
only 2 touches, Messi. Come on,
Messi. Come on.
Yeah, anyone who tells Messi to do 2 touches should be fired on the spot. That's the one time I'd be very quick with that.
Oh man. Yeah, and one other thing that I thought was that I was talking with another coach about the other day. We will have to wrap this episode up before I get into my whole spiel about video and match analysis. We'll do another episode on that because I could talk about that for a while as well. But I'll one more thing I wanted to say before we get to like the closing things out is there was I was looking at a study some coaches did on like decision making in soccer, and it was funny because smaller athletes at the youth level always have better decision making. Not always, but like most of the time, because they don't have those physical advantages of being like bigger and faster and stronger. So, when you see a lot of these great players like Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, who make really good decisions on the ball, Busquets, who's, it's not very short, but he's always been like very,
always
like
slower,
a pencil.
also slower players,
Yeah.
physically slower players. They can't use their pace to escape bad situations.
Yeah. So those players often make better decisions. And it's not a coincidence. It's because they are forced to make better decisions. So if you're watching this and you're a younger player, and you're slight or whatever, and you think that of that as a disadvantage, might actually be your biggest strength. And on the flip side, if you're very big, very fast, very strong, make sure that you're not, if you analyze your own play and think about areas you need to improve on, you're not thinking like, if you're faster than everyone, at some point they're probably going to start catching up to you and you'll lose a little bit of that advantage. Make sure you're not only relying on your speed. You should also develop your technique and, other things, and, make sure you're developing your decision making as well.
That reminds me of what Noblet said about walking soccer. Like it removes the physical aspect of the game more and focuses more on actually decision making. That's a good
for
point.
sure.
Walking soccer is a lot of fun too because everyone looks insanely awkward and they're giggling while they play. And I mean, that's another thing is like soccer has to be fun. I mean,
Put $1 in the fun jar.
in the fun jar. And like the other thing is we have to mention it because we never mentioned it. When you get in the zone is when you make the best decisions because you quit overthinking things. And in my opinion, the best way to get in the zone is to start having fun. I mean, Ronaldinho Gaucho used to play with a smile on his face every single game. And that was how you knew Ronaldinho was in the zone, is he was smiling, enjoying himself. He would do his little flair and his no-look passes. And that's when his decision-making was at his best. He had all the mental blockers leave his brain and he just played. And that's something that I think a lot of players need to do because they always have something in the back of their head telling them, I can't do this, or I should do this, or I shouldn't do this, or what will coach think if I do this? And you need to put that behind you and remember that you have to have fun and play. And sometimes when you just put some of that pressure to the side and play, you'll make better decisions automatically without even really thinking about it because you're not overthinking about it.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Any other any people want to pitch in any last thoughts?
Now that I'm on the Discord, everybody go join the Discord. And
100%.
if you got this far in the episode, tell me what your favorite rodent is in the Discord.
All right. Sounds good. I'll put mine in there. Yeah. So like I said, I didn't get to talk about match analysis, which is something I think is huge for decision making as well. But that can maybe be its own topic. And I'm not going to get into it now and make the podcast, 2 hours long because we've all got places to be. But yeah, decision making is a hugely important topic. I'm sure we'll touch on this again in future episodes, maybe do another episode on it at some point. Yeah. So quick shout outs, definitely join the Discord. I'm doing, I'm hopping on voice calls on Discord to talk with basically anyone who wants to every night this week. Obviously the episode will be gone.
It's just like a exclusive podcast.
I'm gonna try to record it and post some, but like, yeah, I know, like, yeah, it's so definitely do that. Obviously you should be following all of us on social media. If you know what's good. Noblet finally got himself a sweatshirt to wear, but I'm sure he still appreciates some merch. So yeah, we'll make sure we get everyone a little t-shirt at least they can wear for the podcast. But yeah, make sure you follow us, sub to me on Patreon if you want to watch the episodes a little bit earlier. And yeah, all good.
All right,
sounds good.
Decisions, everybody.
All right, peace. We'll see you next time.
Hasta luego. Chaval.